People who take late night walks, what's the scariest thing you've ever seen? This story still terrifies me to this day. Our planned camping spot for the night was full. We'd backpacked all day to get to the campsite location, and there wasn't anywhere close to set up our tents. We called our guy on the outside to come pick us up as it was getting late. We had nowhere to set up camp, and the storm was approaching. We hiked to the nearest exit point on the trail, met our pickup guy, and he drove us a few miles down to the nearest campsite where we were familiar with. From here, we could drive up this long logging path pretty deep in the mountains that we had hiked to in previous years. So we were pretty familiar with the area. Anyways, we hop out of the van and it's pitch black out. No moon, it's April in the mountains and still pretty chilly. We're cold, hungry, and exhausted. That's when we noticed this random guy staring at us from behind a tree. We noticed this guy, no headlamp, no equipment, no backpack, just standing there. One of the guys in our group yells at him to come out and explain what he's doing, just staring at us from behind this tree. The guy walks a few feet out from behind the tree and we all shine our lights on him. And I shit you not, this dude's white t-shirt is covered in what looks like blood smears. He's pretty rough looking, long hair, long beard, crazy eyes, and he was wearing a bloody looking t-shirt and shorts in 35-degree weather at night. We're all pretty freaked out, and this is a pretty experienced group of hikers who have seen some shit. We ask this guy what his deal is, and he says we can't camp here. We tell him that that's exactly what we plan to do, and he says, I don't think that's a good idea for any of you. We kind of turn to discuss as a group, and when we look back, he's hidden back behind the tree. As a group, we basically decided none of us were getting any sleep that night if we stayed here, so we packed up the van and left. As we were pulling out, this guy pulled out one of those red filtered flashlights and ran after our van. I'm not kidding, he followed us for at least a quarter mile on foot. He was fast as fuck. We passed a park ranger on the road and flagged him down to tell him how weird that dude was acting, and he said he'd go investigate. I didn't hear anything about it again for 5 years. For the longest time I thought he was probably some pot farmer who had a nearby plot, or a moonshiner who was just living in the woods and didn't want us near his still. People hunt all the time out there, which would maybe explain the blood a little bit. But I was recently at an event with some of those guys again for the first time in years, and that creepy dude from the woods got brought up. One of them who still lives nearby broke out his phone and said, I forgot to tell you guys, I saw him again. Pulls up a news article, and there he was. He had been arrested for murdering some poor girl on the trail. Timelines didn't match up, so I fully believe we saw this guy shortly after he'd murdered someone else. He hasn't been charged with anything else as far as I'm aware. However, I'm not backpacking without a gun anymore. A couple years ago, I was at the start of a typical weekday night stroll. I was living in an apartment complex in Florida at the time, so it was the only opportune time to do so without being completely drenched. The exact moment I was crossing the sidewalk adjacent to the entrance of said complex, I witnessed a middle-aged dude punch his wife in the face in full view of me and another passerby. The passerby called the cops. The dude was arrested. It wasn't a scary situation to my own well-being, but I did find the situation chilling. Mainly how nonchalant the guy was in assaulting his wife in public, and two, how both the abuser and the wife were pleading for the cops not to be called. It was domestic abuse so normalized, it happened in full public, without any second thought or rationale. Many years ago, my boyfriend and I decided to take a late night walk around his generally safe neighborhood. We got a few steps past the driveway when a shirtless guy came running over with a hammer in one hand and a machete in the other. My boyfriend stayed super calm and asked the man what was going on. Apparently, some man had just broken into his apartment and tried to kidnap his young daughter, so he was chasing him down to either shatter his fingers with the hammer or chop off his hands entirely with the machete. And he thought my boyfriend was possibly the man. My boyfriend gave me his car keys and told me to take myself home because we lived in different houses at the time. So I went and got his car, and by the time I was backing out of the driveway, the man was screaming at my boyfriend, who was just standing there calmly with his hands in the air. I drove a block away so the man wouldn't see me, rolled the windows down to try to hear what was happening, and called the cops. The machete man ended up running off, and I don't know if they ever got him. My boyfriend was fine though, thank God. I tried an electric bike my aunt had while we were visiting. I wasn't used to how abruptly it would accelerate, so when it did, I yelled for a second. My cousin was taking a video of me the whole time because I most probably would have done something to make an absolute fool out of myself, like crashing, and it would have been hilarious. So there I was, riding to the end of the street and turning back around, when I noticed a group of men holding large rocks in their hands. They were all barefoot and came by as if they were hunting someone down. We were then told to come inside immediately. Apparently someone had just taken a machete and started attacking people at a party just around the corner where we were having a party. Later that night, we replayed the video and we noticed that when the bike accelerated in the video and I yelled, there was a man walking in front of me holding a machete. In the video, you can see him quickly whip around and glance at me. We're glad he didn't swing the machete. He was so close he wouldn't have missed. He matched the description of the man who hacked random and multiple people that day. One night I was out for a late walk in the rain. I always enjoy it because it's peaceful, smells great, quiet, and never see anyone. I walked off this trail back into the road and saw a big pile of garbage under a tarp at the end of the cul-de-sac the trail ends in. I got a creepy chill like, that could be a dead body or something and I'd never know. I don't know why, but I just got a weird feeling that snapped me out of my calm walk. After that, I picked up the pace. About 500 yards away, there was a parked car with a guy sitting in it, in the dark and in the rain, at like 11 PM with the car off. I got super creeped out at this point and changed my route back to the main road and hurried home. Turns out, it actually was a dead body that someone had dumped under that tarp just days earlier. It was under there for 4 days before someone investigated it. The guy in the car turned out to be just a random dude. Still, this made me stop doing my late night walks in the woods for a few months after it happened. Another user commented, "It's weird how your mind did that. I've had a similar experience. I was at work on this dirt trail, and to the left of the fence I had to unlock, there was something laying on the ground. My first thought was that it would be crazy if it was a dead body, but I just assumed it was trash. Couple days later, I found out that it was a dead body. Some guy had went up there to kill himself. I truly believe that my mind knew it was a dead body, but that it wanted me to ignore it to maybe protect me from seeing something like that. Not a walk, but I frequently run in the wee hours of the morning. Where I live is basically suburbia meets country roads. Anyways, one morning at about 4 AM, I went for a long run. About 2 miles in, along a sidewalk, out in the middle of nowhere, next to a cow field, I saw 2 individuals, a male and female fully dressed in what I would describe as fancy clothing standing on the sidewalk, giving me the 50-yard stare. The man had no eyebrows and was wearing sunglasses while the woman stared at me with a look I can only describe as Lady Gaga in American Horror Story. It was completely dark minus a small light above the cow field about 20 yards away. They didn't say a word, they didn't move when I was running towards them, only staring at me without moving a single facial muscle. I immediately noped and ran to the other side of the street and ran as hard as I could. As I ran past them, they both turned their torsos with the exact same facial expressions in synchrony as I ran past them. Both of them had this weird smile on their faces, almost like they knew who I was. It almost felt like they were analyzing me, or as if their eyes were seeing through me. They never said a word and never made any other movements. When I circled back an hour later, they were gone. I've never been more creeped out on a run, and I've ran past snakes, crack addicts, floods, and a man without pants. One time, while I was taking a late night walk, I had a strange feeling of being watched. I turned around to see what was behind me, just out of intuition, and I legitimately saw someone step behind a tree rather quickly and try to hide from me. I stood there for a second to confirm this, then I speed walked home. The weirdest part is how sudden and strong the feeling of being watched was. Fucking creepy. Something similar happened to me when I was walking home from a late night gym session at 24 Hour Fitness. A white van passed by me, slowing down, slowly took a right turn in front of me. A couple of minutes later, I reach the turn and see the van stopped at the exit of a parking lot. It's facing back my way. It's like 4 a.m. and nothing else is going on, and I'm creeped out. The van starts coasting forward slowly after I make the turn, and I sprint across the street to a gas station and into this small, dead-end tire pump station and press my body against an area of the wall that the van can't quite see me. It literally pulls into the tire pump station and stops. I hear the engine running right fucking next to me, but they never get out of the van. I just stand there pressed against the wall until they pull out and drive around the gas station into the lot on the opposite side of the wall. I hear the van lingering for some time before it goes silent. Still, I wait a while longer before I leave and run the rest of the way home. Almost 100% sure I witnessed the kidnapping. I was gonna get my mail late at night while living in an apartment complex, and on the way back, I noticed a woman in her pajamas surrounded by a few men right by a car. There was an argument, and it looked like they forced her into the car and drove off. I ran over, and I found her slipper nearby on the grass. I, of course, called the police, and they came, and I let them know what I saw, but I never found out what actually happened. Similar experience here. In high school, late at night, walking home from a friend's house, maybe a mile away. Halfway car comes cruising super slowly down the street. I hear someone screaming in the car. I was sure they were calling for help. I start following the car, and as I get on the phone with the cops, the car starts pumping the gas, so I just run after them and try to follow them, but I lost them pretty quickly. Never learned what really happened. I grew up in Japan, in a rather mid-sized city. I worked a job that had me coming home at around 2 to 4 a.m. every night. I preferred to walk the back street that paralleled the main street home because it felt more cozy and peaceful. Nothing of note ever happened on that street until one day. I turned the corner onto the side street, and about halfway down, there was a young woman. She wasn't doing anything, just staring at the sky, staring straight up, neck at a 90-degree angle, mouth slightly agape, long black hair hanging. I hesitated, but decided that, since nothing weird has ever happened here before, that it would be fine. So I went to walk by, and as I get up next to her, I pause to look at her. She hasn't moved or reacted to me. She's just still staring directly straight up towards the sky. So I fight my instincts and ask her if she's okay. She doesn't react. I look up to see if she's looking at something, but there's nothing there. So now I'm thinking there's something medical going on. So I reach out and touch her on the shoulder. She jolts and looks at me like she's just noticed me. I ask if she's okay, and she just stammers and says sorry before hustling down the street the same way I was headed. I decided to smoke a cigarette to let some distance get between me and her, but towards the end of the street, she stops again and just continues to stare at the sky. Doesn't move for the whole 5 minutes it takes for me to finish my cigarette. I walk down the main street for the next couple nights. I once took my dog on a walk down a well-known path through the woods at 10 p.m. I went late, so we wouldn't run into anybody, and had success a handful of times before. One night, we were about a mile in, and my dog stops in her tracks. She's a scaredy cat, so I didn't think much of it. In the illumination of my red headlamp, I saw movement of what looked like a person about 10 feet in front of me. I kept walking, and sure enough, there was a person. An old lady wearing sweatpants and a windbreaker was sitting on the ground, rocking back and forth, muttering to herself, and cradling what looked like a towel. I thought it was pretty weird, but didn't think much else. My dog and I went along for a little less than a mile to our turnaround point and began walking back. Within a minute, there was this same woman on the opposite side of the trail doing the same thing. At this point, I realized she had been following us since we passed her the first time. At this point, my dog and I are just short of 2 miles in on this trail, and I always brought my handgun with me, so I felt fairly safe, but still, there was something in the back of my mind that was very on edge about this whole situation. I kept looking over my shoulder on the walk back and never saw her, but I could hear her. She never came close to us and never spoke to me. I made it back to my car and got the fuck out of there. I never went back to that trail when it was dark out. I worked night shift for 7 years. One night, a young, thin, blonde woman was walking down the street at 2 a.m. with no pants or underwear on and a button-up shirt open. I tried to ask if she needed help, and she just stared forward, slowly walking, staring forward. I called the police and they came and stood in front of her. and she slowly walked into the cop's hand and stopped. I didn't stay and went back to work. I still think about her and what the hell was going on. I tell myself it was sleepwalking on Ambien or something, and that she wasn't just assaulted and in complete shock. I'll never know. But she was very pretty and seemed well groomed. The whole thing was very strange. Another user commented, "My dad sleepwalked out of the hotel and woke up in his tighty whities, hiding behind the ice machine like a gremlin, scaring the shit out of other guests." Of course he didn't have his room key, so he had to go down to the front desk and basically let them know he had sleepwalked and locked himself out. The clerk was apparently quite nervous when he approached, presumably because at least one guest had already let him know about the delirious ice machine man. During winter, in a rural no-cell service kind of area, completely dark, no street lights nor anyone in sight. Temperatures were around 20 and it was snowing. I was walking my dog with a flashlight. Then I heard someone start screaming bloody murder. Flight or fight kicked in. It truly sounded like someone was being stabbed to death for what seemed like forever. I chose to find out what the hell was going on. What I found instead was beyond anything I expected. He was a 5-year-old boy wandering down the road all alone. All he was wearing were light flannel pants and a thin t-shirt, no shoes or hat, and screaming so loudly it echoed through the hills. I dropped my dog's leash and walked up to him slowly, gently and repeatedly telling him that I'm a mum and that he's going to be okay. I wrapped him into my arms and carried him to a neighbor's home to warm him by the fire and call for help. Edit. The boy's parents were visiting friends. The boy got up at night to look for his parents, who'd left him and his sister home while they were out drinking. He got lost in the dark and just kept walking and screaming. Originally thinking I'd get in the crosshairs or witness some bloody domestic fight is what put my mind in the scared shitless headspace. Plus dark, no cell phones, no weapon. I'm the person I'm most scared of in this story. It was around 9 PM and I was cleaning my apartment and I looked up what time this takeout restaurant closed. It was like a 5-minute walk and less than a block from where I work, so I take this walk often. I was drinking, but I wasn't drunk. I was just gonna pick up some food in about an hour, go home, eat, and get some sleep. That's the last thing I remember. Then out of nowhere, like something out of a dream or movie, I am suddenly just awake and crossing the street to the restaurant. I have no idea how I got here, and I immediately start to feel for my pockets to find my phone. It's not there. My wallet also isn't with me, nor could I find my keys. They are always in my right jacket pocket because that's how I lock my door. Finally, I find my keys in my offhand pocket. Then I look around. The normally busy bar-covered intersection is a ghost town. This is where I start to enter panic mode. I turn around and start walking home. The first thing I notice is the giant McDonald's sign is off. They close at 11, I know this. I start listening for cars and there is nothing. I walk a little more briskly and the pizza place I frequent has its sign off. They close at 3. I pick up my pace just trying to get home as quick as I can. I get half a block from my apartment building and the only person anywhere around me bikes past me, then turns around and circles me. I freeze and look at him out of the corner of my eye. He pedals off and I sprint to my door. My door lock was always kinda janky to the point where I was the only person who could lock it easily. The mechanism just wasn't secure. I get to my door and find it locked. I get inside and grab my phone, completely crazed trying to figure out what time it is. It's dead. It took what felt like an eternity to finally get it to charge and turn on. When it finally comes back on, I see that it is 5 in the morning. Something in my brain switched off around 9 PM, went blank for 7 hours. Then I locked a broken lock with my left hand and walked 5 blocks before I snapped back awake. I'll never forget that moment of slowly realizing where I was and not understanding what was wrong. If you guys liked this video, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and also check out my TikTok account, Scary Time. That is linked in the description below. And as always, stay scary.